Is my Google Pixel 7 RAWs better than my Nikon Z mirrorless camera? Well, I guess I have to find out in today's episode. What is up, y'all? It is your Project Photography back with another video, and today, before we get started with this video, please make sure to check out my other socials in the description bar below. But this is the Google Pixel 7. I did a full review on it last week where I just talked about the JPEGs, not the RAWs. Talked also things like computational photography and so on. But this week, we're talking about just the raw images because I feel like it deserves a video all on its own. So what is a raw photo exactly? A raw photo is when the camera is able to take all the image and the data from the sensor and use it for better editing experience in Lightroom or whatever software that you want to use. But essentially we get more data, more dynamic range, more flexibility to create better images overall. So in today's video, I really want to talk about just three things. Essentially how the RAWs perform when it comes to like Lightroom and editing and so forth, and then how the RAWs stack up to my mirrorless camera, and then the conclusion. So jumping right into the raw performance. Overall, I actually very much like how the RAWs look straight out of camera. I think they look very natural. I wish there was a little bit more vibrance in terms of the color, so a very similar problem that we had with the JPEGs. But overall, I think they look sharper, they look cleaner, and they definitely look more suited to what a professional photographer will need. I wasn't necessarily a huge fan of the JPEG straight out of camera from the Google Pixel 7, but overall, I do like the look of the contrast and so forth in HDR, but we don't get any of that with RAWs. That's all things that we can go ahead and edit ourselves. And I actually think the RAWs actually look sharper than the JPEGs straight out of camera, which is odd because they do a lot of like over sharpening stuff, so you think it looks sharper, but me personally, I actually really like how the RAWs look. But there definitely are a few caveats. You need to be working in the proper lighting scenario. For example, if it's very low light, would not recommend shooting RAWs. Use things like the JPEGs because it processes in camera and then also applies noise reduction and so forth, or just straight up use night mode because night mode is actually my favorite mode on the Google Pixel 7. You're able to take that nice long exposure and make sure that we reduce a lot of the noise and make just a much cleaner image. But another thing that I really think we need to look out for when it comes to using it in the right scenarios is that we don't want to use it in super high contrast situations because again, we have a smaller sensor, so it's not going to be as good at gathering light or having better dynamic range as something like a full frame sensor on the Nikon Z6. So when we push those shadows a lot, we're going to be introducing a lot more noise. And we also have a problem like chromatic aberration, where in those extremely high contrast situations, we're going to see purple and green fringing on the edges. And that's honestly not the Google Pixel's fault. And the everyday user isn't necessarily going to have or notice that issue at all. So this is really something that I think a lot of professional photographers definitely need to worry about. But if we're picking up the Google Pixel 7, it's not necessarily for professional work. Another note is that we cannot use RAWs when it comes to computational photography. So if we're doing things like an action pan or a long exposure or even night mode, we do not get raw photos from them, which is fine. Most of the time I'd want the JPEGs anyways, but that's just something to know. Another thing that I think is actually kind of cool is that we do get raw photos from the front-facing cameras. So this is great for editing your selfies and make them look as picture perfect as possible. And in my camera settings, when I have it set to RAW, I also have it set to RAW plus JPEG. There's no option for just RAW, which is honestly just fine. It makes sense because again, you wouldn't be able to use any of the computational photography or anything like that. So RAW plus JPEG works for me just fine. But now I really want to talk about the mobile Lightroom workflow. So I actually think it works incredibly well. There's a few things that I think are positive. First of all, when we are sending the RAWs to Lightroom, we actually expose for a lot more of the highlights, which is great for, again, those high contrast situations. We would like to avoid them if possible, but when those do arise, we are exposing for the highlights, which is great. We retain more detail and so forth. So it doesn't mean pushing the shadows, but I think it's a well-worth trade-off. And another thing you really need to think about when editing RAWs is how fast you need the photos. If we're talking about we want to just snap it and upload it immediately to something, then it doesn't make sense to use the RAWs, but we also get the JPEGs that you can use. So when it comes to deciding whether we want to use RAWs or JPEGs, we really need to understand, do we have enough time? Is this something that we want to put more energy towards? And we need to be really more selective with the RAWs that we decide to edit because we just don't have enough time or space to really be editing like 30 RAWs from our phone. That's just impossible. But yeah, honestly, my rundown of the RAWs is that they are generally very good. I like the performance, But now there's something I really want to talk about, and I have a quick announcement before we get into our next part. And it's essentially that I've started selling photo critiques. So what is going to happen is that you can, purchase one of the 3 options online on my website, and then you essentially send me the amount of allotted photos. I go ahead and critique them, and then I deliver the final product, which is either a video or a call or a document or some sort, so that you get the best advice in terms of how to improve your landscape photography. And I've been doing photography for the past 7 years. I'm a professional photographer for the last couple years. And I'm really excited to start sharing with this with you guys because I want to help you improve your landscape photography and take it to the next level. So anyways, guys, there is a link down in the description bar below, and you can go ahead and check it out there. But with that being said, let's move on to the next part and talk about how the RAWs actually stack up to my Nikon Z camera. I actually really enjoy the performance of the RAWs, like, don't get me wrong. But when it comes to how well the RAWs perform with the Google Pixel 7 relative to the Z6, it's night and day difference. I mean, first of all, the images are much cleaner out of the Z6. We get better colors, better dynamic range, and so forth. The thing about the Google Pixel 7 is that it's not really meant to replace this camera. We do, however, get a lot of the same benefits that RAWs would give us, like a Z6 would give us. I mean, we get better dynamic range, we get better flexibility, we get better colors, and so forth. We get the ability to create the image in the exact way that we want it to. Obviously, it's not gonna be replacing my Nikon Z6 anytime soon, but I wanna ask you this question. Can you fit a Nikon Z6 into your pocket? The answer is no. You're not going to be putting a Nikon Z6 in your pocket or a mirrorless camera or any sort of thing, because that's not what it's intended for. I mean, when I'm going out and packing a mirrorless camera, I'm packing out an entire bag. I'm packing out a bunch of equipment, accessories, and I really have to be deliberate in terms of the things I bring. But the Google Pixel 7 is something that I have on me at all times. It doesn't leave my sight because it's my phone. It's, I take calls and text people and so forth. The fact that you can have a RAW photo capturing device in your pocket at all times, and the fact that it's actually quite usable and pretty decent, is astounding for a $449 phone. At least that's what I bought it at. And my Nikon Z6 with a 24-70 is $3,000. I mean, when you just consider the price difference and what you get out of these two things, it just makes sense that you don't necessarily have to carry around your full frame camera all the time. This can do a lot of the same benefits, not necessarily the same quality, but to me, the best camera that you have is the one that's always on you. And the Google Pixel 7 is always on me at all times. But with that being said, let's jump right into the conclusion. And the Google Pixel 7 RAWs are actually quite good, guys. I mean, we get a lot of the same benefits that a full RAW, from a mirrorless camera would give us, just not at the same level of performance. The fact we can bring it around all the time is convenient, just makes it a photo capturing device that professional photographers can have and use as a tool. At the end of the day, these are all tools and we use them for all different sorts of things. I mean, does it stack up to the Nikon Z6? No, but it doesn't have to. That's not its job. That's not what it's designed to do. It's designed for the everyday user. And the fact that it even has RAWs in the first place is honestly astounding. Like 99% of people that own this phone are most likely not even gonna use it. We're in this weird 1% niche of people that will. But for us, it's a really welcomed addition that I personally have enjoyed. And I would rather use those than the JPEGs because I feel like I get better flexibility, just create a better image overall. I'm generally happy with the Google Pixel 7's cameras overall. I think like professional photographers and everyday users can use it, alike, but also incredibly different. And as long as you know what you're doing, it doesn't matter what camera you put in your hands, because at the end of the day, it's still you, the one that's creating the photo. It doesn't matter what camera you use as long as you have one in your hands. And if it happens to be in the form of a smartphone, then so be it. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for experiencing the world with me today. And if you are interested in getting your photos critiqued and reviewed and getting some advice how to improve them, go ahead and check it out down in the description bar below. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for experiencing the world with me today. Please feel free to rate, comment, subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.